So, have you heard this MAGA claim that Ruby Ridge created blanket immunity for federal officers, that it prevents prosecution in cases like the deaths of Renee Good or Alex Pretti? This claim, though often repeated, is patently false, and here's why. The argument misstates what happened in the Ruby Ridge litigation and misrepresents the doctrine of Supremacy Clause immunity, which is narrowly conditional and absolutely not a free pass for federal agents to take lives without accountability. Ruby Ridge was an 11-day armed standoff in August 1992 between federal agents and Randy Weaver's family at their remote Idaho cabin, triggered by a failure to appear warrant tied to an alleged illegal sawed-off you-know-what sales. The confrontation escalated into a firefight in which Weaver's son Sammy and his wife Vicky and a U.S. Marshal lost their lives, and it led to major scrutiny of federal use of force policies. So here's what the Ruby Ridge case actually established. The Ruby Ridge aftermath produced a major case, Ohio v. Horiuchi, involving FBI sniper Lon Horiuchi. The key legal question was whether a state, Idaho, could criminally prosecute a federal officer for actions taken during a federal operation. Legal scholars analyzing the case, Waxman and Morrison, Yale Law Journal, explain that federal officers may claim Supremacy Clause immunity only if 1. They were performing an authorized federal duty, and 2. Their actions were necessary and proper to carry out that duty. This immunity is not automatic, not absolute, and definitely not guaranteed. It requires a factual showing that the officer acted within the scope of federal authority and did not exceed it. Courts have repeatedly emphasized that the Supremacy Clause immunity is not equivalent to qualified immunity and does not shield officers from prosecution when they act unlawfully. In fact, the Ninth Circuit's en banc decision in Idaho v. Horiuchi was vacated as moot, meaning it created no binding legal precedent. So the idea that Ruby Ridge somehow gave federal officers complete immunity is simply false. So here's what Supremacy Clause immunity actually does, according to the legal scholarship. It protects federal officers from state prosecution only when they act lawfully under federal authority. It does not protect them from prosecution when they exceed their authority or violate constitutional rights. It does not apply to private citizens, vigilantes, or state-aligned paramilitary actors. That last part may prove important at some point in the legal arguments. This doctrine is narrow, contested, and fact-specific, not some sort of blanket shield. The claim that Ruby Ridge gave federal officers complete immunity is a distortion and a deliberate one. The Ruby Ridge case produced no binding legal immunity precedent. The key appellate ruling was vacated. No sweeping immunity rule survived. In addition, the Supremacy Clause immunity is conditional, not absolute. It requires proof that the officer acted within lawful federal authority. Also, federal officers can be prosecuted. They can face federal criminal charges, civil rights charges, or internal DOJ prosecution. Ruby Ridge itself resulted in internal discipline, civil settlements, and congressional scrutiny. Hardly total immunity. Also, the doctrine does not apply to the cases being cited. The incidents in which Renee Good and Alex Pretti lost their lives, which the MAGA influencers are invoking in this case, involve different facts, different jurisdictions, and different legal standards. Nothing about Ruby Ridge preempts federal or state investigations into those incidents. And legal scholars explicitly reject the blanket immunity interpretation. Waxman and Morrison, that I referenced earlier, described the legal landscape as underdeveloped and contentious, not settled in favor of federal immunity. So, what is this claim really? It's part of a recurring pattern in MAGA aligned discourse. It involves taking a complex federal doctrine, stripping it of nuance, reframing it as evidence of a deep state shield, and then using it to delegitimize investigations into potentially inconvenient cases. The actual legal scholarship contradicts the claim at every point. In fact, I wouldn't even address it if it wasn't so commonly made. And we have to call out these type of lies at every opportunity before they become normalized, because that's the goal.